It's so good to be loved. Good morning, my friends. Let us begin by taking a few breaths together. So, if you will, exhale and breathe in and let go. Another deep breath and let go. One more deep breath in and let go. So this month, the month of May, the permaculture principle we've been exploring is apply self-regulation and feedback. And I came across a quote at some point this week that said, I think it's on your paper, I'm going to paraphrase, but it's something to the effect of, if you want to grow, you have to be willing to accept feedback. If you want to live a perfect life, you have to be willing to act upon that feedback. And how many of you drive a car? I think most people. So this metaphor should work. Your car has all kinds of little lights and sensors and things, right? If you're getting low on fuel, the gas light's going to come on. If there's something going on in the engine, the check engine light will come on. Most of our cars are computerized now, so if your tire pressure is getting too low, a light will come on. You know, if there's this system in the machine that is there to give you the feedback that says when something needs your attention, an alarm goes off, right? And the car will keep working for a while if you just ignore those lights, right? But if your check engine light comes on and you just keep driving, say, I'll deal with that at some point, something is going to happen. You know, when I got my first car, I think I was like 18 or 19. It was this old Oldsmobile that I'd bought from somebody's grandpa, you know. And I was not good about oil changes. You know, I was also 19 and totally broke, and like $40 was a lot, you know? And it was like, ooh, this is too much. This is too much to spend right now. I know this is important, but maybe I'll deal with it later. Well, eventually that car blew up on the side of the freeway, right? And that little bit of work I could have done, that little expense I could have taken, that one little piece of maintenance that needed to be taken care of that I kept not doing, even though the feedback was there, eventually led to something that blew up, that destroyed the car completely, and there was no car left, right, to drive. And then I had to find a new car, and then learn the cycle all over again. And then next time I needed an oil change, it was like, you know, this thing seems pretty important. Maybe I'll do that, right? And so the thing is that your body, your life, the universe has all of these check engine lights built in. That the feedback is always coming to us. And it's whether or not we accept the feedback and choose to act upon it that makes all of the difference in the world, right? And the piece about self-regulation is that no one can do it but you, right? You might get feedback from other people, but what you do with it is yours. And this whole conversation about self-regulation and feedback is really, I said this a couple weeks ago, but it's kind of like our first principle, observe and interact, but like on a whole nother level, right? We're taking observe and interact to like its highest. Because if you really are looking at yourself, if you really are observing your life, if you really are paying attention, all of the feedback you need is there. And there's a lot of voices in us and information that we're listening to all the time. And part of our spiritual practice is learning how to filter what information and what feedback is coming at us and what is true And what is perhaps the trauma or the old story that's encoded in our bodies giving us information? Or our hurt and our pain, or the thoughts that are in our mind, or our ego. But then there's also that something deeper that is whispering into all of us all the time. And when we learn to listen to that voice, and we learn to differentiate it between our trauma and our ego and our body and our mind, we can know that that voice will never lie to us. That voice will give us the truth and point us in the direction of where we need to be every single time. And I want you to think about the car of your life today and contemplate what are the feedback signals? Where are the lights and indicators in your life? Are there any alarms going off? Are there any little lights you're not paying attention to? Because again, the feedback is there. It's right in front of you. And I was having a conversation with a mentor of mine this week, and they reminded me of something that I say here all the time, which is when we've all heard Neil Donald Walsh say, when you choose to be something, what? Everything unlike it shows up. But someone said this to me a little bit differently this week, and they said, when we choose to be or do something, everything unlike it must show up so that we can know that it's there, so that we can clear it up, so that we can have what we've asked for. It's not just like, say what you want, and then everything unlike it just rises up for no reason at all. It's like, no. When you choose to really step into the life that's calling you, when you really choose to live into the love that you want, or the prosperity that you're asking for, or the peace or the world that you're calling, in order for us to step into it, in order for us to cross the threshold into what we're asking for, we have to address everything that's blocking it from our life. We have to address all of the little signals and lights and triggers that are there in order for us to actually create and open ourselves to what it is that we're seeking to receive and be. Right? When we choose to be something or do something, we then have to do the work to accept the feedback and recognize that everything that shows up after that decision is there to help us clear the path. And when we clear the path, we can live in the life that is calling us. And there's an invitation here for all of us to really show up for ourselves. You know, it's like everyone in the world can give you all the feedback. Some of it's nice, some of it's not. But the opportunity is yours to do the self-regulation, to actually check yourself. And spiritual practice, for me, is about teaching each one of us to truly look within, to truly be willing to look at ourselves in the mirror, to look into ourselves, and recognize that there is something more that is seeking to be expressed in us, in this community, in our society, and in the world. You know, your body is a self-regulating system. When you get hot, it sweats. When you get cold, it shivers. Right? That's self-regulation. It says there's a sense of balance. There's a perfect place of homeostasis and harmony. And if the temperature gets too hot or too cold, the self-regulating system acts in a way to push you back into balance. And I want us to think about that sort of self-regulation of the body with its sweating and shivering as the same thing that's happening in our world right now. The same thing that's happening in each one of our lives, that when we step out of our balance, of our state of homeostasis and peace, the signals start to come our direction, right? There is a whole lot happening in our environment, right? To our environment because of the lack of balance and homeostasis in many of our choices as a human society. And the planet is giving us all kinds of feedback, right? Are we listening to that feedback, or are we just going along as if we just didn't see the check engine light was on? Because I feel like most of humanity is driving our cars, and all of the check engine lights are on, all of the gas lights are on, all of it's on. And it's like, what are we going to do about it? Are we just going to keep on moving forward in the same old way and not be willing to look at the pattern, not be willing to shift it, not be willing to heal it? Because what's going to happen? The car's going to blow up eventually. Or we can take the signals that are coming at us. We can see what's happening in our world. We can see what's happening in our society. We can see what's happening in our nation on many different levels. And we can look to our own lives and recognize that the signals are there, that the feedback is available, and that if we are willing to start to look a little deeper, accept that feedback, and then be the ones who are willing to hold balance for ourselves, to be willing to do our work, then we can take that self-regulating system and make it a conscious effort. Make it a conscious action to recognize that if there are alarms going off in your life, you're the only one who can pull over and check the oil. You know? And if you know what the indicators are telling you, that's a huge step. Because without those lights, without those signals, we wouldn't know what's happening under the engine. We wouldn't know what's happening in our bodies. We wouldn't know what's happening in the world. But the alarms are going off. We do not have that excuse. We do know. But we have to be able to step into something deeper. And it takes a willingness for each one of us to be willing to sit in whatever it is that is moving around us. To be willing to be uncomfortable. To be willing to show up and choose something deeper. And something that I have been reflecting on recently and noticing in myself is that these feedback loops that we've been talking about of belief and expectation and experience reinforcing each other, and the depth of our spiritual practice, I realized that spiritual practice always starts as an effort. It always starts as something that we have to do, that we need to make time for, that we have to work on, that might seem a little bit hard at the beginning. But when we're willing to continuously do the work and do the maintenance that's required, eventually the effort goes away and something else emerges. You know, a really lighthearted example of this is that in my early years of really understanding that I was a person who struggled with depression, one of the tools I turned to in some of my darkest moments was I would force myself to laugh. Sometimes I had to leave the house I was in and go drive to a parking lot somewhere where no one would be able to see me because it looked a little crazy. But if you force yourself to laugh, the physical activity of that will turn into real laughter. Even if you're not feeling it, give it a try. It'll come over you. And I realized that at some point, that laughter practice became something that I turned to over and over and over and over again in some of my darkest moments. And then I look at myself now, like 15 years later, and I am a giggly person. And I realized that, like, I'm giggling all the time. And people always comment, like, Elisha, you laugh so much. Even at things that might not be appropriate. I'm often laughing. And And I love that example because it really like landed for me this week in a number of other ways as well, that when we dedicate to a practice and we push ourselves to it, and when we get into those deep moments where we're recognizing that something has to change and we're willing to hit it and work on it every single time, that eventually that thing that seemed hard becomes completely natural. Right? And we need to be cultivating a sense of peace and a sense of deep, divine, unconditional love that goes beyond all circumstances. Because the world that is in front of us is going to require all of us to love through a lot of very difficult things. And if we are not willing to cultivate that love, we're going to continuously see the other. We're going to continuously want to point the finger and blame. We're going to continuously look at all those people out there that are doing all that stuff that makes us so angry and realize that we can be angry at what's happening and also stand in a place of love. And that is a powerful balance. Love is not just the squishy heart, nice love that we think of. You know, if anyone's ever raised a child, or I worked in a classroom with children with autism for 7 years, and there's a sternness that needs to come with love sometimes. And what if we began to walk in the world as people who are so grounded in our love that it comes through us naturally, but that there's a sense of peace that comes with it, where we're able to recognize that there's something deeper happening for those that we might want to point our finger at. You know, I look at what's happening in our nation, in our courts, in a lot of big decisions that are being made right now, and it's really easy for me to want to get angry. And yet, there's something in me that I feel waking that wants to look to what is underneath all of this. Be willing to look deeper to the soul of the people that we are looking at. And be the one who's willing to give the feedback that's necessary to help the world around us begin to engage in this process of self-regulation. I had a conversation with another mentor friend of mine this week, and she was talking about being at a conference in Atlanta around racial issues and social justice. And she said to me, you know, Elisha, black people in America love this country. She says, but America's broken her promise over and over and over again, and we're angry. But because we love America and who she says she wants to be and the promise that she keeps breaking, we're going to stand up louder every single time something happens and put our foot down more and more and more and stand for the promise, stand for the truth, be the presence of love even in the face of the continuous broken promise. But what happens is that in that place of love, you become willing to be the place where the feedback might land, where that which needs to be spoken gets spoken into a place where it might finally be heard. But love doesn't give up. Love continues to show up over and over and over again, even if love has to show up with anger, even if love has to put their foot down and keep saying no. But if we're willing to cultivate a deep sense of love within us that goes beyond circumstances, that feedback loop can lead to our awakening. It can lead to us seeing that there is more here than we can see and being willing to be the place where that something new emerges in the world. And so I want to invite all of us to begin to just look within and first look at ourselves. What signals, what bits of feedback is the vehicle of your life giving you? And just begin to work with that yourself. And then as you do so, find the practice, find what it is that's going to help you deepen into the healing that's necessary to then be able to look out into the world and see the bigger things that need your love and attention and participation, and perhaps be willing to be a place where something new is happening. So take a deep breath and let go. And let us breathe together again. And as we breathe into this moment of now, I just invite us to remember first and foremost that there is only one of us here. That one is life. That one is the earth. That one is consciousness. And it is activated, it is participating, it is unfolding in, through, and as each one of our individualized consciousness. That each one of us is part of this self-regulating system called life. That each one of us has a natural connection to this sense of balance and that still small voice that whispers into us that will always tell us the truth. And should we be willing to listen, that voice will indicate to us what it is that we need to know in every moment. Let us cultivate an awareness of this inner guidance so that each one of our lives becomes a self-regulating system that brings about greater harmony, greater balance, greater truth, greater love in every moment. And that every time we wobble or step off the path or lose our balance, we are reminded how to find our center again. And as we return to that center over and over and over and over again, at some point, we find that that center is everywhere. And it has enveloped us, surrounded us, become us. So that then we become a new place of creation as we walk in the world and we begin to shift and change the cycle around us. And so this morning, let us just drop into a state of gratitude for the feedback that comes to us in relationship, in community, from our inner knowing, from the planet herself. Let us be willing to look and listen and act upon that feedback. And let us remember that there is something greater at work here. There is a power for good in this universe that is so much greater than we are. And we can give ourselves to it. We can allow it to move through us. We can be the place where healing happens. And so for all of this and so much more, I just invite us into a state of surrender in this moment as we just let it be. And so it is.